Welcome back to Filmonomics at Slated. I'm Steph Paterno. Now, as most of us know, audiences crave originality, or at least a fresh take on a proven concept. But the industry always wants known quantities and some sort of proof system that it's going to be good. This is one of the classic paradoxes of the industry, and in our latest Filmonomics talks, we investigated this issue. So let's turn to Kevin Iwashina and Daniel Bauer, and joining us was my partner and the president of Slated, Jason Scoggins.
We all want to have original material. However, I think at the same time that does not necessarily always mean that if you're investing into a film that you want original material because you want to look at stuff that's maybe proven. But I think at K5 International we look at projects and we evaluate on an annual basis with our development team around 1,000 projects that come in from producers or managers and agents. And I would say in these 1,000 projects that come in, I think we sit down every week and try to find the needle in the haystack. And I would say first, obviously, I think it's the script that's very important, and that's obviously where you start looking for, and you want to find something different. And I think the TV, I would say the success of TV at the moment shows that people want to have original ideas, something that's away from the current formula. However, at the same time, it's also risky.
Well, I mean, I think here's the big irony I think about that statement is that I think it's hard to finance originality. It's easy to sell it, right? So, if you're a financier or a foreign sales agent, it's how do you find that person to take the risk? Everyone wants who's the movie star? What's is the budget at the right number? Is it a genre that I can pinpoint? And great, and that gets made, and that's a for a specific formula. But as a salesperson, primarily someone who works in the North American marketplace, those are almost harder to sell, right? Because what sells to a studio, what sells to a distributor is something that's original, unless you're very, on the highest end, comic book movie, Harry Potter's book series, you know what that is. But in terms of from a sales perspective, I think originality is what sells to distributors, but originality is frankly the hardest thing to get financed in the independent film marketplace. So someone solved that problem.
What I find interesting is what you just said about it's easier to sell. If you would think that if that was true, then getting things financed would, there wouldn't be that disconnect. So I guess the question is, where is that disconnect between those two things?
Well, it's getting someone to risk that capital, right, and take that risk. So you can't, how do you measure originality, right? It's all execution dependent. So you see a movie, I don't know, Dope, which I loved, but how do you finance that movie? African American story set in the 80s, they're gonna, how do you know, no cast that's known? Like, how do you commit to Fruitvale Station? Like, how do you make that move? How do you measure that film on an ROI perspective? You can't, right? But it's the safe ones that get made. They turn out bland, and that's fine, and you'll sell it to. But if you really want that film to cross over or have that sort of heightened awareness, you've got to find somebody to take that risk, and that's just the hardest thing to do.
All right, so then, are you paying any attention to estimates and comps? So we spend a lot of time thinking about. We've talked sort of offline about Slated's new scoring system, and there are definitely comps as part of the financial analysis there, based on the context of what you just said. So then, are you even paying attention to comps and sales estimates at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for us, those things become very important, right? So for as much as, I can sit up here and talk about, originality and just selling myself to get everyone excited. But no, those become very important reference point, right? So how do I apply traditional statistical analysis to something that is hyper original? Well, it's about, this, however, you look at, I don't know, Fruitvale Station, Selma, these African-American movies work, so even though there's no value for a black American internationally, you should still make it because this can happen. And so comps become very important and historical data becomes important. I think the challenge is, how do I apply real data to this unique, esoteric project that I'm trying to make with the first-time filmmaker and no one in it, and use Bruce Willis as the comp to say why it's going to be successful.
The most important part is that you find the needle in the haystack, and then you say, I always knew it. This was the winner. and you just have to bury all the movies that you did in the past that didn't work out. So, and I think for us as a sales company in general, if you look at the list, I would say when we went to development and we have our weekly meetings and discuss about the projects, I think for us it's always, we discuss every week about all the projects, and at the end of the day, which of these movies we're then taking on board is maybe at the end of the day going to be very successful, which not. I always say nobody of us really knows. I think we all have tastes. We can go with certain directions, and it's clear maybe you don't like certain genres, or you like some directors more than the other, or you discuss the script, and sometimes you like one script better than the other, and then you say, let's go for that one. But at the very end, I think from my point of view, it's clear nobody 100% knows for sure what at the end of the day is, when the movie's finished, is really going to work or not.
So it's really hard, I mean, the irony is that all we try to do is find the outliers to prove to prove the rule, right? So we're using Whiplash so we can make the next Whiplash, when in theory, like, it should never, the second one should be made, right? So that's what's very challenging about this business, right? Is that we're all looking for originality. We're all trying to make those movies. We're trying to find the comps. But then the comps are usually the exception, and so you'll use the exception to convince someone to like do the normal thing, right? So it's like on a meta level, it just makes no sense at all.
Now, as you've just heard, the industry is crying out for some sort of method of scoring and quantifying originality so that they can convince buyers to take a chance on something new. And that is something we take very seriously at Slated. In fact, originality is one of the core components of our scoring system. Speaking of scoring, in our next segment, we will be exploring the notion of filtering and helping the industry vet thousands of projects to find that needle in a haystack. Now, while you wait for that next segment, we have a new feature we're starting, which is video engagement with our membership. Filmonomics has always been about engaging with our members through dialogue and education and helping each other out. And to that end, we would like you to submit to us any video questions you may have via your social networks. All you need to do is put in the Filmonomics hashtag, we'll find you. And in our next segment, we will do our best to answer your questions. So until then, don't forget to subscribe. Over and out.